check, check. All right, well, that's better. Welcome everyone to the McKinney Area Democratic Club's first meeting of 2022 General Membership Meeting. Yes, you can clap for that. We thank you all for being here this evening. We have a great night planned with some fabulous speakers, fabulous candidates. I first want to thank Plano Democrats and Jeff Quiggle is going to live stream the event. So thank you, Plano Dems, and welcome everybody that is here for the Plano Democratic Club's February gathering. I also want to start by thanking Tux and allowing us to be present in this venue tonight again. And you all know that I love bartenders, so Matt is our bartender. Everybody say hi, Matt. And we need to make sure we're taking care of Matt because we want Matt to know that Democrats appreciate workers and we appreciate a living wage. And we want to make sure Matt goes home happy tonight. So make sure you take accordingly for Matt. All right, the next person I want to say thank you to are our program chairs. So the program brought to you tonight was put on by the McKinney Democrat program chairs, and that is Kathy Bollner and Sissy Golden. All right, you may have seen the Beto stickers around. Those are yours to take. McKinney Democrats coasters, those are yours to take. As a thank you for coming this evening, we appreciate your presence. I also want to make sure that you know we have our sample ballots out on the table. The sample ballot that the McKinney Democrats is passing out is this large paper ballot. You can take this to the polls with you and just go right down the list, and you won't miss a race that way. So I want you to go all the way to the end to make sure we get all the county races as well. The last thing I have is our QR code to become a member tonight. For a steal of a deal of $25, you too can become a member of the McKinney Area Democratic Club. And that $25 gets you through the entire year of 2022. It's just a donation. It goes to pay for things like this program, this space, printing of these ballots, things like that. So if you would be so kind, Miss Angie Beto, I think one is by you there on the clipboard. If you want to hold that up, and then I think there was another one by Matt Lakey and Amanda. If you want to scan that QR code, please, and give us a little donation for our work here tonight, we would certainly appreciate it. $25 is for your membership fee. I think I got it. All right, thank you, Angie. Yes, you can go scan over there. Candidates, if you are a candidate running for office, could you please stand so we can recognize you? So please see these candidates in their space when the evening is over. Our speakers are done, so you can get more information there. Next, I'm going to introduce our program's chair, Ms. Sissy Olner, to introduce our guest speaker tonight. Sissy?
Thank you. It is my distinct honor and privilege to introduce our candidate tonight. I am a proud fourth-generation Galvestonian, and Joe, who was not a BOI, was not born on the island, made his home in Galveston, even though he was from Houston, and managed to be a three-term city councilman and mayor. Really, really proud to introduce Joe. He saw 2 years ago the opportunity and the need to take out Ken Paxton, and he has spent every day of the past 2 years working like it is his paying job to get rid of Ken Paxton. So that if hard work and charm could win this race, Joe has got it, he has it in the bag. So I'm going to introduce Joe Jaworski.
I love it. Well, McKinney, Texas, are you ready soon to tell Ken Paxton how ashamed you are of him? Yeah, I'm mad too. I really am. You know, it goes back to summer, as Sissy said. And by the way, Kathy, Liz, Sissy, thank you so much. McKinney Democrats, thank you so much. I'm feeling the love from North Texas, I gotta tell you. Plano, Richardson, McKinney, and now the Dallas Morning News endorsement, right on. Thank you so much. But it all goes back to summer 2020, and it had perhaps been one Trump COVID briefing too many. But my thoughts started to turn toward how poor our state government is serving us. And I remember, many of you have heard me say, how great it was upon graduating law school at the University of Texas in 1991 that our governor was Ann Richards. You know, I got to meet her, you know. And as the story goes, right near the end of law school, I was having a little extra time on my hands, and I met her at the grocery store, Fresh Plus at 43rd and Duval. Here's the governor, you know, 4 months into her term, shopping in the produce section at Fresh Plus, just like I was. So I went up to talk to her, and she gave me 10 good minutes of her time. And I don't have a transcript of that conversation, but I do remember how she made me feel. And Maya Angelou said it best, you may not remember what someone said to you long ago, but you'll always remember how they made you feel. And on that day in May, 1991, the governor made me feel, this young law student, validated, understood, respected, because Democrats like people. And here we are, you know, because the future was so bright in May 1991. Here we are, 30 years later, wistfully recalling how reasonable George W. Bush was on immigration. I'm not satisfied with that, because it has been a precipitous decline in service. Now we have Greg Abbott, Dan Patrick, and their consigliere, Mr. Paxton, who clearly has national ambitions of bringing Napoleon back. It's true, and that's really what you ought to compare it to. Here's what I conclude. McKinney, are you with me on this one? You can't trust the Texas GOP to lead this state any longer. Am I exaggerating when I say that their policy decisions and omissions are costing lives? I mean, let's look at the recent year. I mean, a year ago, the Winter Storm Uri, what a tragedy. I mean, forget the shamefulness that the energy capital of the world was brought to its knees. But people died. My precinct chair, Steve Napier, great guy, Vietnam vet, a Marine, tough guy, wept in, you know, my arms because his wife died in his arms on night one of the freeze. Sissy knows this well. Those Galveston homes in the East End are not meant to retain heat. And so she died. And there were many others. And now the lawsuits are wending their way through the courts. Property damage to the tune of $250 billion. People are dying as well due to the original negligent mismanagement of a pandemic. I mean, I think we see the light at the end of the tunnel, but that's not to ignore 80,000 deaths over the last 2 years. Governor Abbott, do we wear the masks or not? Do we get the shot or not? It was much more about his incumbency than it was about good public policy. And don't get me started on Senate Bill 8. You know, and Ken Paxton has his fingerprints on all these things. Senate Bill 8, the General Counsel of the state of Texas allows Senate Bill 8 to pass out of the legislature, allows the governor to sign it. I mean, now we see for all the war on women, in writing, in black and white, codified in the state Human Resources and Health and Safety Code. And don't forget, lawyers and judges that they amended the Civil Practice and Remedies Code as well, in a true outrage, not to minimize what they've done about your reproductive health and your reproductive choice and fairness. But I gotta say, did you know that in this very law, where they appoint a vigilante who can earn no less than $10,000 upon suing an aider and abettor, and of course it's too cute by half, right? The Attorney General made sure of that, following the model legislation handed down by the Heritage Foundation and people like that, ALEC, and all these little dark think tanks that come up with all these laws in the South, generally. They made sure to add this nice authoritarian touch. If you as an aider and abettor, you know, the partner, the Uber driver, the clerk who checks you in from behind the frosted glass at the doctor's office, perhaps the manufacturer of the equipment, if you as aider and abettor who has been sued dare to hire a defense lawyer, and that lawyer does the bare minimum, which would be to assert an affirmative defense of unconstitutionality, because we all know, mathematically, reasonably, objectively, Senate Bill 8 is unconstitutional under Roe v. Wade. If you are so bold as to assert that in court, your attorney and you are jointly and severally liable for attorney's fees when you lose. That's right, they've turned your lawyer against you. It's just outrageous, turning centuries of common law sensibilities of zealous representation on its head. You want to do something about this. I know you do. So let's go vote.
Yeah.
But wait, Senate Bill 1 passed. They've made it harder for you to vote. Jeff, they've made it harder for you to help someone to vote. And you best do it right, because you might get prosecuted if you don't. You know, McKinney, it would sure be great if we had a people's attorney to help on these matters. I want you to know your attorney has arrived. All right, so with that dour opening, let's look at some good news. I'm checking my time here, guys. Let's look at some good news, because I gotta tell you something. I got some real good news. You are looking at the next Texas Attorney General, ladies and gentlemen, right here. There's a path to victory, sissy. There's a path to victory, and I see it as clear as day. And it goes something like this. It's all based on your boy, Paxton. His unprecedented level of criminality has drawn no less than 3, count them 3, office holders to run against him in his own primary. That has not happened in our life. Guy seeking a 3rd term ought to be a pretty safe bet in a GOP state, right? Has drawn 3 office holders. George P. Bush, the land commissioner. Eva Guzman from the Supreme Court, who literally resigned to run against Paxton, and good old Louis Gohmert. Who, and you know, these guys are serious. Gohmert and Bush literally have given up a safe re-election bid because they are passionate about how corrupt and the great lack of integrity. And I mean, just for a minute, that's something we agree on. I mean, this race begins with a bipartisan agreement that Ken Paxton has got to go. So what does that look like in the fall? Now, I put it to you that your boy Joe here is respectfully the best choice among my esteemed colleagues. And look, I'm proud of Lee, Rochelle, myself, Mike Fields, even T-Bone Rayner. We all mean it, you know? And the fact is, there hasn't been a contested Democratic primary for AG since 1998. So give yourself a hand. We are ascending. But I'll be 60 on March 1st, the day of the primary. So this, of course, gives us a good opportunity for all these good-natured jokes. Give Joe a birthday gift he'll never forget. I've been a licensed attorney for 31 years, and I've practiced law, litigated, resolved, tried cases in state and federal court all across Texas. I've been a mayor and a city councilman, like Sissy said. A mayor pro tem during a major hurricane. I've actually used the Texas Disaster Act. And I've been a mediator for the last 10 years. coming up with innovative solutions, and learning deep listening skills. And look, I come from a family whose legacy is no man is above the law. Now, my grandfather, Leon Jaworski, uttered those words in the hallowed halls of the United States Supreme Court. And of course, he was referring to then President Richard Nixon. But man, are those words applicable to Ken Paxton. So let's look at what happens here in the fall. Because I'm here to tell you, Paxton's going to be their nominee again. Why? Because Donald Trump has anointed him, and because he's got the power of incumbency. So he gets to own the libs on abortion, immigration, gerrymandering, voting, and appear on Maria Bartiromo weekly to pat himself on the back. And in the small-minded GOP primary, that's what plays. So he's going to win. The only question is, will he need a runoff? But here's the magic. Here's the good news. Next fall, when those moderate Republicans who put their time, money, and effort into George P. Bush and Eva Gusman, see, I'm leaving Gohmert out of this one. They're going to be mighty sore come March 1st, or maybe May 24th, when their prize horse loses to Ken Paxton. But in the fall, in this state where there is no longer straight ticket voting, they'll vote for Patrick. They'll even vote for Abbott. But when they get to that third race, Attorney General, they're going to say, Ken Paxton, you SOB, I do not forgive and forget so easily. I'm skipping you. Or better yet, they may do something unusual. They may do something they haven't done in a long time. They may vote for the Democrat, Joe Jaworski, the lesser of two evils. You can see that's going to be our new t-shirt, right? But that's all good and well. We all want, and I mean, look, I think that's how people vote. And, you know, Justin Nelson, who I'm sure we all voted for, God bless him, in 2018, he got real close, 47%. The Libertarian got 2.6, and Paxton, you know, got 50.4. I mean, the guy almost didn't hit 50. And I tell you, we're going to make up 3, 4, 5 points with moderate Republican support joining every Democrat we can register and turn out. So, here's a little piece of the sort of things I'm going around the state, and it's feeling real good. I want to recognize my campaign manager, Diana Arevalo, former state representative. Diana, thank you for all the work you're doing. Just last week, we were in Laredo, Eagle Pass. You know, we've just been all over. She was yesterday taking care of business in Rio Grande Valley. I also want to recognize the former Mayor Pro Tem of Terrell, Texas, the terror of Terrell, Texas, Charles Whitaker, our advance man. Charles, thank you for everything. So, as we get around the state, and we've done 250 appearances over the last 12 months, we've sent over 1.6 million texts. We've sent our first mail piece last week, and the second one will go Thursday. We've done 5 million impressions on digital ads. We are working it, ladies and gentlemen. Here are a couple of things that I think are important to people, and I put them in the form of pledges. Do you have time to hear a couple of them?
Yeah.
All right, well, let's start with the most basic. As your next Texas Attorney General, I will never embarrass you in the United States Supreme Court. It's amazing you have to say that, but I think we do. Number 2, as your next Texas Attorney General, I will unequivocally support the Affordable Care Act. And a specific pledge is, on day 1, should there be any lingering litigation from the Paxton or even Abbott administration, it shall be dismissed before the lunch hour. I want to be a transformative Attorney General on the matter of legalizing cannabis. For jobs and revenue, to offer a wellness alternative to our veterans so they no longer have to rely only on opioids from the VA. And more importantly, on the matter of social justice and criminal justice, we need to get rid of this wasteful, petty prosecution so that young adults, and let's be fair, principally young adults of color, are no longer incarcerated. And when we eliminate this wasteful, petty prosecution, you know what we do? We fund the police. Yeah, because we're going to save $300 million statewide every year so police and prosecutors can fight real crime. Sissy, as a former mayor, this one is personal to me, and I condemn Ken Paxton for allowing Patrick and Abbott to wage war on cities, counties, and school boards. Yeah. So as your next Texas Attorney General, I pledge to you my Attorney General opinion section will call balls and strikes on matters of unsettled law like you want me to, but when it comes to local decision-making authority and where there is room to breathe and room for interpretation, I will proudly evince a bias in favor of local decision-making authority. Let the cities be themselves. Let Plano be Plano. Let Brownsville be Brownsville. Let Terrell be Terrell, Charles. I think it's called federalism, right? So when Abbott looks up at DC and says, hands off President Biden, states' rights, the logical extension of that is, okay, cities, counties, and school boards, you get to do your thing too, as long as you're not breaking the law. But of course, they forgot that second part. Now, do you have time for one more? You got it. I've saved the most important for last. I really have. It's the most important because it's the most essential. It's what defines us as Americans. It's why we left the king in the dust. The people own the government, not the monarch. And the way that people affect their government is by your vote. So let's talk about the essential act of American citizenship. Ken Paxton is so proud of his voter integrity unit. His own website touts the successful prosecutions that his unit has created. Now, Judge Oldner, he's playing games with words again. I don't know what successful prosecution means. I know what a conviction means. I know what an acquittal means, but there's apparently some Twilight Zone here he's referring to. But that's all right. Let's use his numbers. 600 since 2004. And I'd like to know how many ballots have been cast in Texas so that I can weigh the significance of the 600 he brags about. Forget the midterms, like we're going to have on March 1st. Forget all the local elections in all the 254 counties and all the cities and the municipal utility districts and the school boards since 2004. My God, how many votes is that? Forget the constitutional referenda we have every now and again. Let's just talk about November every 2 years. 4, 6, 8, 10, etc. It's 100 million votes. So you know I'm being conservative since I'm leaving all these out. Plug 600 into 100 million and you get a product so annoyingly small as to be less bad than the stuff we drink in the water every night. So I put it to you, McKinney, that we don't have a voter fraud problem. We have a Ken Paxton problem. So here's my final pledge, and then I'm going to hand it back. As your next Texas Attorney General, I will take the ashes of Ken Paxton's fake voter fraud unit and turn it into General Joe Jaworski's voter access unit. Because you ought to be able to call the government if someone is abusing your voting rights. Yes, that's right. If you get in line at 6:45 p.m., but they close the doors before letting you vote, you ought to be able to call the Attorney General's office. If you sign your name, as you do, on the application to vote by mail, and you sign your name as you do on the ballot itself. Send it in, but some busybody at the clerk said, well, this signature doesn't quite match, I'm throwing this one out. You ought to be able to call the government. Hey, parents, you ought to be able to call the government. If your 18-year-old looks at you and says, Mom, Dad, I don't know what you're talking about. When you say, honey, did the principal offer registration to all seniors attaining the age of 18 twice this school year? Because, you know, that's the law in the state of Texas. Texas Election Code 13.046D as in David. They didn't take that away from us, okay? And it comes from a Dallas legislator back in the 1980s. And it requires every principal, public, private, charter, religious, to offer, I mean, there's no question about it, twice a year registration to every senior attaining the age of 18. My God. Can you imagine if there was an attorney general who sent a letter with the beautiful embossed letterhead to every principal? I mean, there's thousands of them, but we'll just take thousands of stamps and thousands of letters and thousands of envelopes, and we'll send them, dear principal, this is your Attorney General, Joe Jaworski speaking. Please do confirm receipt of this letter and let us know the 2 dates in the school year that you've selected to offer registration, and we'll be there to celebrate with the kids. Can you imagine if we had 100% compliance with this? And why shouldn't we? I mean, we do it with selective service. It's the law. And can you imagine if we can stoke the same level of zeal in our 18-year-olders when it comes time to performing the most essential element of American citizenship that they exhibit 2 years earlier when it's time to get the driver's license? Transformative. And if there's one thing I do during a 4-year term, every year it is going to be that. And of course there'll be others. But that is how I think we get out of this morass. You know, in a concluding thought, it wasn't that long ago that we relied on 18-year-olders to fight fascism the last time it appeared. There were 18-year-olds storming the beach at Normandy, you know that. And so we can do it again here on the land of Texas, our Texas. Our Texas, not their Texas. Get rid of the fascists and the authoritarians. This is our land. Democrats, we are ascendant. I want to ride your shoulders all the way to Austin. Let's do this together, ladies and gentlemen. Joe Jaworski for Texas Attorney General. Thank you. So, you know, we ought to save some time for questions, right? All it takes is one, and then, you know, yes, sir, here we go.
Do you have any strategy to make sure that the Attorney General makes home money?
I love it. That's a good one. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question. You were talking about legalizing cannabis and talking about criminalization of that. Is there anything you're thinking about, like retroactive, for people that are incarcerated currently, very small, especially people of color?
Kate, that's great. I'm so glad you asked that. I always kind of rely on that follow-up question. Yes, it is very clear to me that when the law changes, then it is only fair to do 2 things in addition. 1, release everyone immediately who is imprisoned on a possession charge. I mean, if they have other charges, then that has to be cleared separately. But if that's all they're in for, they should be immediately released on the day the law passes. Number 2, and this is, I think, millions of people, you know. Anyone who has a charge, no matter how remote, that is burdening their record should have it immediately, by operation of law, expunged. You don't have to hire a lawyer at your own expense, by operation of law. So thank you for asking that. Yes, sir, and then yes, ma'am. So I have been reading Forget the Alamo. I have been reading a biography of Governor Hogg. You know, and he was Attorney General too, by the way. I just read, I finished Watergate Girl, Jill Wine-Banks. She works for my grandfather, fabulous account. And I read John Hill's autobiography, former Attorney General John Hill, for the state, for Texas. I know, right? Yes, ma'am.
I just have a comment. I have a friend who works in the hydroponic business, and she works for a company in South Dallas, and Ken Paxton and Dan Patrick have invested in that company because they're going to get all their ducks in a row before marijuana is made legal. So they'll make a bunch of money.
Yeah, so what a grift, right? And what I would say is that, you know, we and Diana will back me up on this, but you know, we run around, you know, campaigning so hard, but there is got to be time for reflection and study. And you know, you could hire someone to do it for you, but I want to go through with a fine-tooth comb his campaign finance reports for ever since he was AG. I think there is probably corruption in plain sight. And there's something I just filed for the first time called a personal financial statement. I've never had to do that, but I did. It's pretty blasé, but I want to see what his says and see if he's filing it right. We'll do some more research on that guy.
Sorry, I have a follow-up question. I kind of have one first in my head. So I volunteer with the North Star Economies kids. So a big problem we're having in a big problem we're having in the states that legalize cannabis, while especially not legal yet, is that they're giving out a lot of certificates and a lot of allowances to whites and none to blacks. I mean, I think it's New York City is less than 7% right now. The rules have been black shop owners.
Yeah, no, it's on, file that under restorative justice. It needs to be, there needs to be a sort of a truth and reconciliation of how harmful the war on drugs is, as to marijuana at least, and how unnecessary it's been on the communities of color that you cite. So it would be appropriate if there were sort of a weighted consideration, not affirmative action, quote unquote, but as an actual admission that these laws harmed these communities more readily. And it ought to be geographically manifest, and that's going to be in a lot of cities, but I think it also needs to be opportunities for land to be provided for small businesses. And I would love to see black farmers, for example, making great money and providing a service so that when we go into our dispensaries, people can proudly say, that's my product. Yes, ma'am. Right, so homelessness among the veterans. So this is obviously something that the state and the federal can work together. I do think criminalizing homelessness is just a complete joke. I mean, what, we're gonna jail you and deter you from being homeless. What? I mean, at that point, it's really not a choice, you know? So my thought is, money solves it, and there needs to be, I would say this, I would pull back to I would identify my local control platform, because there are cities, I think, like Houston, that are doing public-private partnerships with churches that are, and I mean like urban street churches, like, you know, Pastor Rudy in Houston, and they are coming up with some great ideas on how to address the root cause of homelessness. And I think a lot of it is mental health, and as a Texas Attorney General, I want to be transformative on this. And instead of Ken Paxton's ongoing culture war, where it's always about guns, abortion, elections, etc., immigration, and he picks winners and losers in his culture war world, he's missing an opportunity of being a consumer protection advocate, one thing of which would be to let the private health insurers know that there's a new sheriff in town. He'll never do this, I will. And we are going to enforce the Mental Health Parity Act, which requires insurers to address mental health just like they do physical health. It's the great crisis of our time, especially with adolescents. But I think that people don't just become homeless overnight. You know, it's a slow degradation, and a lot of it passes through mental health issues. So if we are dealing with that on a meta level, I think we will, you know, work toward curing a lot of the underpinning issues in homelessness. But I think in terms of actually helping someone who's on the streets, cities are doing it right. Austin tried to, and they're now having to, because the citizens passed a referendum. So I would look to local control on that. Yes, sir.
So nowadays teachers are being attacked for teaching CRT or students not doing so. So would you be open to creating a special prosecuting branch to handle those and make it as criminal as assaulting police officers?
Right, so the Texas Attorney General does not have original criminal prosecution authority, but the district attorneys under the Texas Constitution do, and to some extent county attorneys. I will support local prosecutors instead of Ken Paxton, who likes to get in their business for political gain. What I would say is this: there are constitutional issues involving suppressing freedom of speech and, frankly, good common sense. And so I will be as vigorous a constitutional scholar and prosecutor, you know, I'm using that word in italics, as I might be were I to have original criminal jurisdiction, which I do not. And in civil court, in federal court, and sometimes Texas state court under the Texas Constitution, I will support teachers who are teaching our history. Challenge it.
Okay. You said that you would support communities making decisions for themselves. That comes back to my question about book rating.
See.
And the whole idea of rewriting history. That's all connected.
Well, sometimes the local communities do get it wrong. I mean, I use this as an example. I mean, you're right. Sometimes you have to go deeper into the person's character who's running for office. I mean, if Lubbock, for example, wants to become a sanctuary city for unborn life, and they want to pass a resolution or put a banner up, be my guest. But the moment you try to enforce it against Planned Parenthood, then you will feel my wrath. You see? So that's the difference. And so you're right. I mean, it's not a blanket term where you're like, okay, check that off. I mean, at some point it does devolve into a second question, or it begs a question. If a city wanted to ban within its borders something that's clearly constitutionally protected, well then, obviously their local decision-making authority has to yield to the great Constitution.
Another question. What do you feel about privatization of community schools? Because I think they become for profit, and then, that we do not.
I'm unequivocal on this. Thank you for asking. I am against them 100%. They should all be closed down. And the logic, it's such a great question. The logic is, wait a minute, are you kidding me? It's like toll roads almost. I mean, it's like if we are having so many community ills that we're just farming out the punitive aspect of it, then we are literally defaulting on our obligation as a government. We need to find out what is causing crime to happen and deal with that, as opposed to we give up. Would you like to make a profit on these people? That's outrageous. Yeah, I'm against it. I mean, very clearly. All right. Yeah. Yes, ma'am. So.
Because I really think that's what CRT is about, is that they want to take money from these public schools and give it to private schools, which of course then always they can share their students and they can be insular. Whereas public schools, they are obligated to teach every child.
Yeah. Right. So I'm very concerned about this because you notice that the charter schools aren't happening so much in McKinney. I mean they're happening in urban areas where there's poverty, and people are just giving up on public schools. Like in Houston, the charter schools pop up, but it's also kind of a substantive thing. It's like, you know, you can tell that the GOP has been in charge here for about 3 decades because charters are really ascendant and public schools are having issues, especially in large cities. So I'm very wary of there being a tipping point. Our Texas Constitution requires public education to be fully funded, and there has been, you know, litigation over the decades, but there needs to be a cleaning up and a rededication to public education, and this Robin Hood thing is clearly broke. There needs to be a new way to fund it, and the state needs to fund it. The state needs to meet its obligation under the Texas Constitution. Let me just say, I'm going to come back to you, that yeah, I remember when the lottery started in the early 90s. Oh, we're going to put it all toward education. Well, you know. Yeah, no, I'm against that. I didn't understand the initial question. Yeah. Well, private schools ought to be private schools. I mean, there's wonderful religious schools and, you know, private non-denominational schools. Well, get with it. You know, do your best. Madam, yes. Are we done?
Yes, I think so. One more round of applause.
Thank you.
I know Joe has to get going on the road to his next location, so we really appreciate you being here in McKinney. We are going to take a minute to welcome the next part of our program is the candidate forum. The first thing we'll do is